Welcome back to another episode on the podcast. Today, I'm talking to Melissa Schwartz, who helps highly sensitive families and adults master their emotions, set healthy boundaries within themselves and others, and embrace their capacity for deep empathy. She draws on both her extensive professional training and deep personal experience to support hundreds of highly sensitive families on 6 continents. She's an author, public speaker, transformational coach, co-founder of Leading Edge Parenting, and an internationally respected expert in the field of highly sensitive children. This conversation was really good. And as a parent, as a single mother of 2, this conversation of 2 highly sensitive children, and as a identifying highly sensitive myself, this was fascinating in the respect of seeing it acted out in my kids and making sense of my own childhood and what it was like to be highly sensitive, raised, not really aligned to being highly sensitive, right? I think a lot of times we suppress parts of ourselves. A lot of our triggers as adults tend to be parts and pieces of ourselves that we suppressed in order to receive love in childhood. And it's no one's fault. Like Melissa says in the episode, we really have chosen specific families and situations that help us learn lessons and move through those things so that we can truly embody who we are. And this is work that I've been doing for years. And, as a parent of children who are just very different, because I think most of the kids nowadays being born are just very different, this is such an important conversation. So whether you have kids or not, if you identify as a highly sensitive, I think this episode will help you come to terms with maybe your own childhood or things that you've been moving through. So it's really, really great conversation. And something that I always say when I, talk about my brother and I, we're very different. We have walked very different paths in life. I'll say that. He's kind of an engineer. He's been working for the same company for, 20 years or so, 15, 20 years, really successful in the traditional sense. And he's also actually really artistic, plays a lot of instruments, just kind of like an all around person, right? Rounded person, I guess we could say that. I, on the other hand, have bounced between thing to thing. I took on a lot of different messaging. And what I always say is like 2 kids who have 2 kids from the same parents, because we're all so different, can have 2 different parents. And this is also the beauty of modalities and tools like human design and astrology, because it really allows us to see the energetics of an individual, right? We can see why I'm one way and my brother is another way, why we both perceive things very differently. And it's a beautiful thing and it's a beautiful tool and it's really helpful. And especially as a parent, I love using human design and astrology with my own children, because I think a lot of times parents want better for their children, and yet they discipline or raise or guide their children in the way that they would have wanted, where your children are likely different from you, right? I think there's a lot of similarities because we spend, 18 years with our parents. So we have certain conditioning, all the things, but we are different people. We have different energetics. And so it's so beautiful to honor that as they grow. And one of the things that we said in this conversation is that one of the best things that you can do for your kids is just to make them feel safe for being themselves. And I absolutely loved this, because this is something that I've been working on, is just being authentic, knowing that I'm safe in who I am and being fully expressed in that. And Jupiter just entered Leo. And as a Leo rising, I love this for so many different reasons, but I've really been doing the work of coming into like, what does authenticity even mean to me? I'm currently in a manifestation program, and we were moving through, sort of the idea that the internal energetic work is 80% of the work of manifestation, and then the 20% is the kind of practical action piece of it. But that 80% is so, so important. And it really is this self-trust, this coming into yourself, having a clear yes, having clear no, not overthinking, but like so believing and trusting in yourself so unapologetically that the rest doesn't matter. And that's something that has been a really big struggle for myself personally, as I was kind of like going through the list and on this live call and listening to like all of these points, I was like, wow, there's a lot of places where I have for sure outsourced what I know to be true to other people, whether it's a lack of taking responsibility, whether it's a people pleasing thing, whether it's just a safety mechanism, because I know for myself that I was and have moments of being a people pleaser, very much so, in order to keep safe. If I'm not rocking the boat, if I'm not contradicting you, if there's no conflict, then I'm safe, right? But I'm not fully expressed in that way. So that's a lot of my work over the past, oh my gosh, 7-10 years has really been coming into myself, knowing myself, trusting myself. And I have officially relaunched my holistic mentorship program. It's a coaching program. It's a 6-month coaching program. So if you're interested, you can either check the link or send me a message and we can talk about if it's right for you. But this is very much, it is health coaching. So there is a health component where we talk about food, we talk about energetics, but it's also really exploring yourself through modalities like human design and astrology, because I truly, truly believe that you cannot outrun a bad diet. You have to, because everything is energy, right? If you think about the saying from Nikola Tesla, that if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. What we consume, what we put in our body, and not just food, this is everything, information, like everything that's coming into our systems is energetic and it is doing something to our body. And so I am not a doctor. I am not prescribing diets or eating plans or anything of the sort. We're just really coming inside. And one of the most important things that we can do, that we really talked about in this episode too, is exploring yourself and understanding yourself and knowing what's yours and knowing what's someone else's, so that we can be certain in that yes and that no, right? And so again, this program is open and available. And you can click the link below or just send me a message. We could talk about it. But I have, over the years, I continually come back to this. And for me, for one, being in this program, that is really helping me see things. And for two, Jupiter and Leo just is like, be bold, be expressive, stop self-censoring, stop playing small, stop not taking up space. Like, take up the damn space, say the thing. Be so unapologetically yourself. And of course, like, if you're intentionally out there trying to do harm, that's one thing, but be yourself, right? I think that if you're being authentic, if you're being you, if you're expressing yourself in a really beautiful way or a way that's true for you, then your intentions are pure and that's felt. And I know that one of the things that I personally have found I struggle with in having a really clear yes and a really clear no is that anytime I feel like this is a narrative, because I'm attaching anytime when I'm sure I can look back and look at all of these moments where I did honor myself and things worked out beautifully. But of course, as is human nature, we tend to just look at the things that didn't work out. And then we put this blanket statement, well, anytime I do this, this happens. Or whenever I do this, that happens. Or you do this and this happens. And it's like, okay, maybe that's the loudest, because that's human nature, is to want to stay safe. But can you go back and find examples of when the opposite happened, right? If you're looking at money and you're like, oh my gosh, I can never save money. I never feel abundant. My bank account's always this. It's like, okay, maybe that's true for you right now, but have there been moments in time where you did not feel that way, where you were abundant, where your bank account was abundant, where you came into larger amounts of money, right? I'm guarantee you there's a point in time where, yes, it has been the opposite. So it's proving to yourself over and over that the opposite is true, that you can embody this other version of yourself, but it is having that clear trust in yourself and knowing with certainty and not overthinking, right? If you take, I've heard this multiple times this past week from different sources, but the quickest way to manifest is to take action. So the faster you take action, the faster you manifest. So if you think about people who have taken 10 years to manifest, well, what actions were they taking? Did they take 10 years to take more action, or were they immediately taking action? So this idea of having a clear yes and having a clear no and owning it with conviction and just like moving forward with it, whether it works for you or not, it's the piece of taking action and not overthinking it, not worrying about what so-and-so has thought, or, oh my gosh, I just lost 20 followers or 200 followers or whatever, like trusting that the right people are going to be coming to you for what you have to offer. So that this conversation is so good. So you can find Melissa on Instagram at Melissa Schwartz. Her website is also linked below. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Substack, obviously the podcast on all the places that you find the podcast, and basically everywhere it's at rochelle.christiane, rochelle.christiane. The website is rochellechristien.com. Again, everything is down the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with a friend if you found it supportive, because it really, really does help the podcast. Join us inside of Third Space. This is such a beautiful community. We have multiple calls coming up next month. We're going to talk about money, flow, the current transits, the full moon in Aquarius, which is going to be huge. And then August, we've also got calls lined up. This is a really beautiful space. We also have a coffee chat, which Jesse's going on vacation and then I'm going on vacation. So we're probably not going to do our next coffee chat until August. But anyway, everything you need to know is down in the show notes. So again, follow, let me know, drop a comment. If you love this episode, share it to Instagram or wherever. And don't forget to tag us, and I will talk to you soon. Welcome to the podcast, Melissa. Today I have Melissa Schwartz, who is a parent coach and author who blends science, spirituality, and lived experience to help highly sensitive people thrive. This is like one of my favorite places where like science and spirituality and woo and everything meet. And as like a highly sensitive, identifying highly sensitive empath, all the things, this is such a fascinating conversation, especially I think as we're in this like intersection of like old world, new world, raising kids, and how, I think a big conversation right now is like, how do we raise our children in this way to allow them to be vulnerable and show up in the world in that way? While there's so many like outdated narratives, right? Of like, it's not okay for boys to cry, like these kind of things. So I think this will be a really fascinating and important conversation for us to have. So I'd like to start with just you sharing sort of, who you are, how you came to this, maybe your experiences or anything sort of, pivotal along your way that really got you into this work. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I always say I was born to do this work. I am the younger of two children. Both of my parents were teachers. My mom was an early childhood teacher with a master's degree from Columbia University. I grew up in New York. And my brother, who's 4 years older than me, was super easygoing. And so, as my parents would say, they both had a lot of ego with him because everything they did worked, and he was like sweet and delicious and adorable and everything that you want in a little kid. And my mom will famously say she couldn't understand why her friends were struggling. Like if they would just do what she did, then they wouldn't have a hard time with their kids. Then I was born and nothing worked. And I was sensitive and intense and felt deeply from the jump. And so fast forward 30-ish years, 25 years. My parents had moved to California. My brother and I had both moved to California. I graduated college actually with a degree in photojournalism and Tibetan studies. I kind of drummed my own path. My brother is a corporate lawyer. He went to college on a full scholarship and Harvard Law School, straight and narrow. We just always had these very different ways about us. And even though my parents retired from their teaching careers, my mom still wanted to teach parents. And so I would go with her to her workshops and sell her CDs in the back of the room. That's how long ago this was. And she would tell the story of, raising these two very different children. And parents would come up to me at the end and they'd say, "Oh, you're the daughter. You sound just like my kid. Can I talk to you?" And so parents wanted to understand from me what was going on for me. They were asking me. And so eventually it evolved into my mom was writing a book called Authentic Parenting Power. And I was sort of like helping her with some ideas and themes in it and reading things over. And I was like, yeah, you left this out, or it wasn't actually what I needed, or it didn't speak to who I was as a child. And so I began collaborating with her on the book and on the work that she was doing, and eventually opened my own part of the practice doing my coaching, but really specializing on highly sensitive children. And that was about 15, 20 years ago. And over the years, my practice has evolved, but ultimately my work is helping parents understand what's going on inside of their children, helping them normalize it, change the circumstances that their children's behavior changes. I don't help parents change their kids' behavior. I help parents change the environment that isn't working for their kids, that's driving the unwanted behavior. And so my approach is different, I think, than a lot of other, parent coaches or psychologists, because I'm not pathologizing anything. I'm not looking as at a child as being problematic or wrong or bad. I'm understanding, I'm able to get into their experience. And one more thing I would just want to say is that as an empath, as somebody who is able to feel other people's emotions, it was incredibly confusing for me as a child and very, very overwhelming. But as an adult, it is actually the thing that makes me really good at my work, because when I talk with a parent and they tell me about what's going on in their home, I can actually feel the child's experience and put language to it from an adult lens in a way that parents couldn't even describe to me. And then I can translate it into tools and skills and strategies that they can use with their kids to help shift what's going on. So the work that I do is incredibly niche and unique, and it is absolutely my life's work. I mean, I know that I was born to do this, into this exact family. I know we're going to talk spirituality, but I believe that we choose our families. Like, I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't have this family. And to be doing this work with my mom all these years later is like incredibly, incredibly special.
That's amazing. I feel so many parallels to your story. Just, I'm the first child, first daughter, and I'm, super sensitive, just so emotional. And then my brother came, and I'm, the creative, and he's just very like, he's an engineer, he's just kind of like gone down that path and just very logical. He doesn't believe in like anything spiritual. And I'm just like completely opposite. But, when I was growing up, I think the emotional piece, the empathy piece, like wasn't really valued. It was like, you need to be hard, you need to be hardworking, you need to do this. And it just wasn't who I was. And I think that, shaped a lot of the relationships I got into as an adult. And there's a lot of parts of myself that I had to suppress. So my journey to kind of discovering myself, has happened in my 30s versus, maybe a little bit younger, because I just felt like who I was as a human being was wrong, because I didn't fit into this narrative and this ideal that was held within my family. And, I've done a lot of work around, my relationship with my parents, and I don't blame them for anything. Cause like you said, we chose it for a very specific reason, right? Like I wouldn't be who I am today had I not had to suppress so much of myself. So I think what you do is so powerful. And I like what you said. It's like looking at the environment, you're not changing the child, it's like allowing them to be themselves. I heard a quote recently. I was listening to a podcast, and I can't remember what his name was. I think I wrote it down, but maybe I didn't. But he was saying that it's like the best thing you can do for your kids is to make them feel safe to be themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because then when they're themselves, I feel like so much of all of the trauma and all of the stuff we have to untangle and unhook from as adults, like, is less, right? I think there's always going to be somebody that's placing some sort of conditioning piece on us, right? But it's like at home, if you feel safe to be yourself, right? So beautiful.
Totally. Yeah. And so often my conversations with parents will end up kind of stretching into like, well, how's my kid going to be successful? How are they going to thrive as an adult? And I think what you just said, feeling safe as yourself, to me, that is success.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I usually define success as being content and happy and going to bed at night feeling good about who you are. That's my definition. But I love redefining it as feeling safe in yourself, because I could be wrong. I think there are a lot of people like my brother and your brother who are on a kind of clear cut, lit up path, who then default into this is what I'm supposed to do, or I'm good at this, or I'm pleasing the people around me, or this is what people expect from me. And they might not actually feel that safe in themselves. I think there are a lot of people who have successful lives, jobs, families, who actually aren't feeling that sense of inner safety, that sense of inner acceptance. I would add into that too. And so, yeah, for me, that is a North Star. That is it. Because if we feel good about who we are, we feel safe in our body, our nervous system, we accept who we are, even if it's not who other people or society wants us to be, then we go on to become these like change makers, leaders in whatever it is that we do, pioneers of our own lives. And isn't that ultimately what we all want for ourselves and our children?
Yeah. And bridging into the spiritual piece, I think that when you are yourselves and truly authentic, you're the most magnetic that you can be, and
Yes,
you're going to attract more things into your life.
absolutely.
And over the last 20, or over the last 20 years, over the last year, 2025, I feel like, has been this for so many people. We've seen it all over the internet. It's the year of shedding and stuff like that. But I truly believe that it was so much of that. And like in my own personal life, I just noticed how much it stripped away all of the noise to be so comfortable with myself, right? And it's a choice. I could have chosen to freak out and all those things, but I was like, I choose to like get to know myself deeper, and I choose to come into a place of peace and like safety, right? In my own body, in my own being. And the rest of it doesn't really matter, in that sense. And I think like once you get to that place, there's still work to be done, but I think that's where like there's just magic living in that space because you're not as rocked by things. People will be
Yeah.
like, I actually love to ask people, and it's both saddening and enlightening, I guess, when I have conversations with people, out, and I always ask people like, "Are you happy?" When they talk about their work or their things, so many of them are just like, "No." And it's
Yeah.
so sad to me, right? It's like heartbreaking that we're just not, we're doing things because we feel like we have to. And I don't know, I just think things are changing. Things aren't going to look the way that they did in 20 years. So it's like our
Great.
our like measure of success currently is going to be very different from the way that it's going to look.
I hope so. I really do, because I think the world that we're living in, it's rapidly changing. I mean, I was born in 1980. I was just talking with a girlfriend that I grew up with the other day about how different it is now for
Mm,
people in like their 20s and
yeah.
30s than it was for us. The world is changing, with AI and technology. There are a lot of jobs that are kind of falling away. There are new jobs that are being like, if somebody told me 20 years ago that influencers were going to be a thing, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But you know what? A lot of the kids that I work with who are tweens and young teens, like they're coming up with these ideas for careers for themselves. And I'm like,
Mm,
what? Like
yeah.
you're building a new industry. Like you are carving out a new world. And I want to acknowledge that it is scary to parent a kid like that. And there is this balance between like trusting and allowing and honoring your fear and like letting go, but living on that leading edge, which is why actually my mom and I named our business Leading Edge Parenting. There's not a crowd out there, to be on the leading edge of evolution, of thought, of parenting, of how we're living as a society. Like you are the forerunners. And so as long as you are doing it confidently, bravely, you don't have to know everything that you're doing. Sometimes we'll talk about the difference between me and my brother. I would imagine you and your brother as for certain kids, it's like they're born like seeing their path ahead like an airplane runway. It's just
Mm,
clear and lit up and direct. You just put one foot in front of the other. But for somebody like me and probably like you, it's more like being in a dark jungle with a machete and just like chopping down the branches one step at a time, trusting that you're not going to fall off a cliff.
yeah.
And for me, the thing that guides me are my emotions, because I know that my emotions are showing me which way to go. I mean, that's what I know about emotions. And as a sensitive person who has more emotions, I have learned over the years that they are there as my compass. They're not there to overwhelm me or to make life difficult for me. People who don't have a lot of emotions have a different way of moving through the world. There's not a better or worse or a good or a bad. There's no judgment implied. But if you are living a life where you are carving out these new paths and sort of like cultivating a new way of living, you've got to be able to tune into your inner knowing and let that be your guide, because that is what's going to keep you safe and on track and moving in the right direction.
Mm. What has your journey been with your emotions? Like, were you always able to see them in that way, or was there a point where they completely took everything over?
Yeah, totally. No, no way. As a kid, I felt completely overwhelmed by them.
Mm,
Sometimes I'll describe it sort of like if like Beethoven or Mozart had like tiny little children hands and they were trying to play one of their beautiful grand pieces, like they know what to do but they just don't have the capacity to do
mm,
it. Like I just felt too many things that I could not express or really identify or put language to. No, my emotions totally enveloped me. I was very much explosive with them. Like they would just kind of come on fast and furious. It has taken me a lot of, I don't even want to say time so much as like life experience with them
Mm.
to get to know what they mean and why they're showing up and what to do with them when I feel them and how to let them move through me and process them. I think, like many people, I used to try to like stifle them so that they wouldn't be scary. But then they would just end up being like even bigger because they all kind of compounded and then exploded, right?
Yeah.
But over the years, I found different spiritual teachers, especially like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Esther Hicks, Abraham
Hmm.
Hicks. I was actually, my mom introduced me to their work um, right as I was graduating from college. So that was like the very, very, very early 2000s, 2001. And I went to a lot of her workshops. I went on a cruise with her, and her work about the emotional scale and the vibration of emotions really resonated with me. I liken emotions to colors, and if I was an artist, if I was painting a sunset over the ocean, I probably wouldn't be using a lot of black or green or certain colors. But it doesn't mean that those colors are bad or inappropriate. If I was painting a forest, I would be using different colors, and so emotions are the same. Like they show up in response to your emotional landscape. And so once we welcome them and start to understand them and learn how to work with them, I think they're amazing. Like they're so cool. But most of us didn't grow up with parents that understood emotions and taught us how to work with them. And so it was too big. Like, stop it. Don't do that because I don't know how to handle it. And I have my own emotions in response to your emotions, and it's too much for all of us, which I understand. I believe me, I get that. And then so it just sort of gets passed down. So it takes really putting a spoke in the wheel to understand what's going on and shift your relationship with them. So I'm still working at it
Yeah.
those days. I still have
Yeah.
hard experiences. Last week I was so angry. I went for a 2 mile walk and I was still so angry.
Mm.
And sometimes that's just how it goes, but at least I had clarity and I had
Yeah.
language to move forward with it. It doesn't mean like the anger is not a bad thing. It's clarifying.
Mm.
It gives us information and guidance. It's just whether or not we're willing to look at it and move through it and feel the discomfort of it, which so many of us don't want to feel. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like we're in that survival mode of like pushing it away and like I don't want to feel this, make it go away. I
Yeah.
love that you relate it to sort of like art.
Yeah.
If you in astrology, your moon is in Leo, and so I also have a Leo moon, and so it is this like artistic. I find so much creativity in my emotional experience, which of course isn't always pleasant. And you also have a defined, or no, sorry, you have an undefined solar plexus. When I first pulled your chart, I put in the wrong date and you had a defined solar plexus. So in my mind, I'm seeing that, but you have undefined, which means you're taking and amplifying the
Yes.
emotions of others. And so I think it's really interesting that, you had mentioned before when you were talking with children, being the empath that can actually
Yes.
feel what they're feeling. And I think that is such an amazing tool to have. And I think what's the word I'm looking for? To be able to acknowledge that it's not yours, that it's someone else's, because that can be really challenging to
Yes.
do, is to separate what's yours from what's someone else. So what has the work been with these children to understand like, hey, this isn't what I'm feeling, this is what they're feeling?
Yeah. So growing up, I thought everything was mine. And life felt very um just like heavy and intense. And I would walk into a room and feel people's stuff. I would feel my parents' stuff, my grandparents' stuff. Um, I'm thinking it must have been somewhere when I was in college, and I kind of spread my wings. I went away to school. And then I moved to California. I think somewhere in there, I started to realize that like I was feeling things, but it was maybe unfamiliar. I don't remember when I first heard the language about being an empath and understood what it actually meant. Um, but I started to recognize that I was feeling things that weren't mine. And probably was in the last like 15 years when I was introduced to Elaine Aron's work. I discovered Judith Orloff's work. Um, it it felt more kind of scientific to me. Like, oh, this is a thing. Like other people are experiencing this too. This isn't a me thing. This is like a human thing. Um, and then I got certified in Reiki, and that was really helpful for me. Um, but I will say that I still frequently come back to the question, is this mine or is this someone else's? That is like an ongoing thought in my mind. I think because I have done so much work in this area, and I do have like real energetic practices and boundaries with my clients so that I can be present for them but not absorb it and then like take it on, which is really important for people who do this kind of work. Whether you're a teacher or therapist, anybody working with people that you care about in that kind of capacity. But even like going to Costco, sometimes I will just take 30 seconds in the car before I get out and just, and sometimes while I'm in there, I might even have to just kind of like ground myself and be like, whoa, this is intense. Like the day before Thanksgiving, I foolishly had to run in to get a couple things. It's chaos and you're feeling
Yeah.
everybody's stuff, but at least being aware that you're feeling everybody else's stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This might be like a weird, almost TMI thing, but it's almost like if you're somewhere and you're like, oh, somebody stinks, you're like, is that me? Do I stink? I just showered. That's not me. Like, oh, it's that
Yeah.
person. Okay, it's that person. It's not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's the same. I mean, our emotions are a sense. We don't talk about them in that way,
Yeah.
but they are a body sense. You know, when you when you cultivate a feeling of like joy or elation, you feel that warm fuzziness moving through your body. And when you cultivate a feeling of like panic or anger, you feel it in your body, you know? And so just like our sense of smell or our sight, we have to really train ourselves to be like, okay, this is what I'm picking up. You know, it the other way I like to sometimes think about it is like, is it internal or is it external? What's really driving what I'm feeling? Is it around me or is it coming from within me? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it takes some practice, it takes some
Yeah.
training, it takes some, skill building. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
muscle that we really have to work, you know?
Yeah. Do you find it has like a different like texture or frequency or something when you discern that it's someone else's?
Yeah. I find that it's um how do I want to say it? It feels foreign,
Mm.
you know? It's like it's not a match to me. And most of the time, if I am not feeling, so let me also just say that when I'm feeling other people's emotions and I'm feeling my own emotions, they feel different. They feel
Mhm.
different in my body. You know, when I am angry because something happened or I'm thinking about something, I feel it. But when I'm feeling like the anger of the collective, like if I read the news and I'm like, oh man, I don't feel it in my body in the same way. You know, it's like I
Mhm.
feel my fields as opposed to being in my
Yeah.
body. But it's also hard to put language to things that are kind of intangible, right?
Mhm.
It's really more of like an exercised perception, something that I've
Yeah.
experienced over and over and over, and I've just sort of noticed the quality of it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and well, what you said too, like it's not a match to you. I think that speaks to the work that you've done on yourself because it's so important. I work with astrology and human design and energetics and things like that with people. And I think that, it's so much about coming in and really sitting and exploring your own like emotions, frequency, energy, like how you feel in your body. And, relating to human design, my son, he also has an undefined solar plexus. So my daughter and I are defined. So we're just like always emotional. And,
Yeah.
when you have a defined solar plexus in human design, energetically, it's a frequency I'm putting out to others, right?
Yeah.
Like I am consistently on this wave. I can wake up in a mood, every day or whatever. But when you have undefined solar plexus, you're taking it and you're amplifying what you're sensing around you. And with my son, I notice I have to check myself when he has outbursts or when he like, gets really upset or something. Cause I've come to learn what his like base frequency is, like how he normally is. And so when he has like, when he's, on one extreme or the other, I'm like, how am I feeling right now? And I tell him, I'm like, if you're sensing something from me, like you don't have to do anything about it. Right. And he's like, well, what if I want to help? I'm like, well, different, but like acknowledging that it's not, you know, you don't have to do anything about it. You know, and he's
Yeah.
9, so I try and explain it in a way that kind of like makes sense to him, while also honoring his emotional experience too, because he's astrologically is a Scorpio rising and he's a Cancer sun. Similar,
Oh,
yeah, you're a Cancer sun
yeah.
as well, right? So there's
Yeah.
so many emotions, but it's also it's so interesting that dynamic between water signs and the undefined solar plexus,
Interesting.
because it's like you understand emotions, but you're not riding the wave of emotions, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. And sometimes, so I also do work with highly sensitive women, and in that work, I'll often start. It's like a 6 month program. I'll start by doing a guided meditation and teaching them how to kind of come into their body and feel their own energy and
Mm,
become familiar, because a lot of us don't really spend the time to like go inward and feel who we are.
yeah.
We're this amalgam of everything that we're experiencing all the time, right? And usually towards the end of that meditation, I say, this is who you are. This is your frequency. This is your essence. You can come back to this anytime. So if I'm feeling something and I'm not sure if it's mine, I almost like check it against that baseline that I know I have, and
Mm-hmm.
that can shift based on, relationships or conversations or things that are going on in my life that are stressful or whatever. But that becomes clear to me that this is moving. But if it's out here and it doesn't line up with this, then it's very clear to me that it's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What does it look like in real time when you're kind of moving through this process?
So I think, again, because this is my work and I'm doing it, so it's sort of like, it's funny because like if I went to the gym and tried to do like a pull up, I wouldn't be able to do it. But I'm going to use the metaphor of like being a personal trainer. If you're in the gym all day long, you're in the gym all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm in the like emotional, energetic gym all day long,
Yeah.
right? So it just kind of becomes second nature to me. There are times where I'm like doing a really hard workout and I have to work for it and like push myself and really like call on all of my tools and strategies. But I think because it's just what I'm doing so much of the time, and I'm really working on minding my energy, especially in relationship to clients and interactions that I'm having throughout the day, um, in the moment, what does it look like? Slowing it down, giving myself, even if it's just a small pause. A lot of us don't give ourselves that opportunity, or life is just crazy and we don't have it. Um, but looking for little opportunities to really just like slow down and take a breath and come back to myself and check in, like, oh yeah, there you are. That there we are, Um, so it's almost like an overarching awareness,
Mm,
this like sort of ongoing, keeping an eye on what's going on. Am
yeah.
I in myself? Am I out of myself?
Yeah. I had a moment the other day where because this is an ever evolving journey for myself as well, emotions, being like
For
extremely
sure.
emotional. And I think like for me, one of the keys has been in acceptance. And I know you mentioned this earlier when you were talking about you were angry and you went for a walk and you were kind of like in it. And I've noticed for myself, it's like when that anger comes up or the sadness, whatever that big emotion is, my internal narrative immediately is like, make it stop, just go away, stop. We don't need to feel this. Right. And so for me, that switch has been in like the other day, I felt angry about something too. And I immediately was just like, okay, just make it go away. And I was like, you know what? No, I am so mad right now. And I let myself be in that for like 5 minutes. I was in a situation where I couldn't like I had to show up, right? But I let
Yeah.
myself just be there for like 5 minutes, is angry and like all the narrative. And then I was like, but I also after that, I was like, I get to choose if this anger is going to dictate the rest of my day, or I can choose to reach for something a little bit higher, acknowledging that that was the start. And I ended up, it was like so amazing, just like watching that shift in myself, right? Because, sometimes it's harder than others. And there are certain, for me, romantic relationships, oh my gosh, that's like my work. It's like I can be so neutral and so like aware and so conscious of all of it, but put me in something romantic, and that's where my trauma comes. And so I'm just like, it's like complete chaos. And so that's still my work. My biggest work emotionally is there, but it's a really, just it's such a beautiful, I used to hate my emotions, and I would shove them down and I would like pride myself in being the one that never cried. And then I was like, but that's not me. I was just being like this fake version of myself, and now I've just come to the places like as painful as my emotional experience can be, like I actually love the depth and the texture and like the I can just like feel it welling up in me now, right? Like I love to be able to see the world in that way where it's like I can like cry watching a sunset, just like how beautiful it is.
Totally.
And not everybody's like that, you know, and you know, everybody has their own thing, but it's yeah, I've definitely come to a place of appreciation for that. And I, you know, of course I my journey is my journey and it's fine, but there is a part of me that wishes I could actually have just like been able to be in that as a child, you
Yeah.
know? But
I think it's very hard to be able to be in it as a child unless
mm,
you have parents that really got it themselves or worked towards it before they had children. I
yeah.
just think, I also, this might be like a little controversial to say, but I also think that the families that we are born into, now I realize everybody listening to this might not share this take and may have had some like real major trauma. I'm talking about these like more like first world traumas where like their emotions weren't honored in the way that they wanted or their parents didn't show up in the way that they wanted. Not like severe abuse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that these levels of traumas are almost destined for us because they catalyze our growth as adults. You know, feeling in childhood like your emotions were too much or misunderstood or unaccepted or unacceptable often push us in our years to these growth opportunities that otherwise we wouldn't be able to have. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if in childhood we were given that launch pad, life would look very different. You know, our journey would look different. I think a lot of sensitive people, at least in my experience, you know, and being in this field for this long, a lot of sensitive people go into the work that they do because they've healed that woundedness and they want to help other people with it. And if
Mm-hmm.
they hadn't had that woundedness, they wouldn't be able to help other people with it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I know for me, that is what I teach from. I teach from my childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I had a bad childhood, but there was plenty of woundedness. I've done plenty of therapy, you know.
Yeah.
And all of the misunderstanding and the challenge and the upset and the difficulty is what I use as my launch pad to be able to do the work. So um I want to say that we are born into the right family for us to get. It's almost like Bart Simpson with his slingshot. It's like the childhood is pulling it back, and then we
Mm-hmm.
can launch. You know,
Yeah.
and the question is really just like how far are you going to pull it back? You know, are you going to
Yeah.
pull it back so far that it breaks and you never get to take the launch, or are you going to pull it back and accept it and say like, okay, my parents were who they were. It doesn't mean I have to validate who they were. You know, you can be upset with them. You can be upset with your childhood. You can, you know, could have been not perfect. And then you take the launch and you say, okay, so what did I need? How can I grow from this? How can I work with my inner child who didn't feel the support, the validation, you know, having all of their needs met in the way that I wish they would have been, so
Mm,
that now we can move forward, giving that to myself, giving it to others, you know, making that my
yeah.
work. To me, it's that's how I know that I'm doing my soul's work because I'm
Mm,
using that launch pad. So I think most of us don't have that childhood.
yeah.
And I also just want to say, like, being a parent is really hard. First of all, being a parent is hard. Plus,
Yeah.
like, working and taking care of other people and yourself and being in the world, right? Like, it's hard. It's really challenging to do that. And I think most of us that are highly sensitive can look back to like specific things that happened when we were kids, like that day that really upset me. It's like, okay, but what about like the rest of your years? You know, it's like we've got these little moments. It's being human, you know, and
Yeah.
um I think it's just it's part of our path. It's what puts the elasticity in our launch into our real life's work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said. I think that, I mean, our mind is always kind of seeking out the negative. I think it's just human nature, right? To
Yeah.
like, when you think about relationships, right? We're always like, you did this, or we pick up on the negative things versus like all of the great times that you had, you know, especially when you're coming to a point of like decision. But you know, when it comes to it's it's so in you know, I always say to you, like, I think parenting is the most spiritual thing you can do because it's like of all of the work that I do and you know, energetically and all this kind of stuff, it's like there are moments with my children where I'm just like it's like hard to breathe because I'm like, how do I want to act right now? You know, or you have an outburst and then, you know, I try and always come back to them and be like, hey, like I was experiencing this, or, you're not wrong for what you did, but like, or no, you're not wrong as a person, right? But like what you did, maybe we could have chosen better or something, right? It's always kind of that repair, I feel like is kind of important. And like I said, I don't always get it perfectly, but it's just like, it's all of your childhood. I feel like it's just like in front of you as a mirror, and your kids, like you said, they like my children chose me
Yeah.
to like it, in a symbiotic relationship. I'm doing something for them, they're doing something for me, but it's like the amount of healing and growth. And it's like I watch my own patterns come out in the way that I parent them. And it's, I don't know, it's fascinating and it's
Fascinating.
challenging. And
Yes.
yeah, it's wild.
Yes.
When parents come to work with you, like what phase, or like where do they tend to be in their journey, and what are they seeking for
Yeah.
their family?
It's a great question. There's not a one size fits all answer. Some parents come to me looking to do better. And those parents are really fun to work with. They're like, I see myself in my kid. I didn't get what I wish I'd had in my own childhood. I want to give them more. Um, I would say that's like maybe 20% of my practice. More of my practice are parents that are in a bit of crisis, or um, they've tried therapy, they've read books, they've listened to podcasts, they've done all of the things, and nothing is working. And the way that I like to explain it is, I actually wrote a children's book using this metaphor where, the book, I didn't use a Porsche and a Prius because I didn't want to get sued, but I like to talk about, like a sports car, and just sort of like a basic hybrid. Children are born wired similarly. We are born with a certain disposition to experiencing life. And highly sensitive people are like a Porsche. We are high needs, high maintenance, demanding, usually expensive. But when all of our needs are met, we're the most fun cars on the road. And then there are people like our brothers who are more like a Prius. They're sort of like easygoing, low maintenance, whatever. Wash me, don't wash me, crack in the windshield, doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to get you where you're going. And what happens is most parents want a kid who requires Prius maintenance, but performs like a Porsche.
Mm.
And that doesn't exist. And most parenting advice, most podcasts and books and traditional parenting wisdom is for Priuses. And if you have a Porsche and you maintain it like you would a Prius, it will not perform well. It is going to underperform, and then you'll be upset with the vehicle. Like, why are you breaking down? Why aren't you running properly? And it's not the vehicle's fault. That's why I say, there's not a problem with the child, it's the environment. It's the way it's being um, maintained and serviced. And if, sometimes I'll even say to parents, like, when I work with them, I'm not going to ask them to do these big sweeping changes. Like, you're still going to put gas in your car. You're just going from like regular to super. It's like we're
Mm.
making these little shifts. And that's why it can feel so difficult for parents to do this on their own, because it's like they're trying everything. They're trying all of these like big sweeping changes, and they're not seeing the results. So they often come to me after having tried everything for a Prius. They've read this, they've listened to that, they've done this, they've tried this therapy, they've gotten a diagnosis that wasn't accurate. I work with a lot of families um, who've had a diagnosis, or they have a 504 and IEP for their child, and that still isn't working, or it's not working at home. Like, their kids are okay at school, but at home things are falling apart.
Mm.
Again, that tells me it's the environment. If a kid is struggling across the board, there's probably like a learning difference, or there's something neurological or going on in their nervous system. But if it's circumstantial, if they're just having a hard time at home, or with a particular parent, there's something in that dynamic that isn't working for them. And once I can feel it out, by like usually within the first conversation, I'm like, okay, I get it. I feel it. I feel what's going on here. And then it takes me a little while to help the parents implement things. And the truth is, most of the work that I do is for the parents. It's not really about their kids. It's like their kids are the catalyst for them to have their growth. There is a bold statement, but I'm going to say it. I don't think there's one parent that I've worked with who's really had a sustainable shift in their family from working with me that didn't change themselves. Because it's not really about their kid. It's about how they're relating to their kid, how they're perceiving their child, how their inner child is interacting, getting into power struggles. Like, you need to respect me. I'm your parent. Like, listen to me. But that's their 5-year-old self saying, like, nobody listens to me. And now they're doing that with their 5-year-olds, you know? So, um, I honestly, I think the work I do is magical. I love it. I love when I get to work with a family who has a kid whose behavior is off the rails. The parents feel totally hopeless. And in 3 months, they're like, actually, we don't need our call today because things are going so well. We have nothing to talk about. Like, nothing is more exciting for me. Nothing, because when you're in that place and you feel like nothing is going to work and hopeless and something here is really wrong, and then it just takes like a few little tweaks and shifts, and all of a sudden everything opens up. It's so exciting for me. So exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to laugh. You were talking about power struggles and my son
Yes.
who's 9 and I'm a single mom. So I think it's part of this, dominance thing that's like alpha, right? Where he's like the man of the house. He feels like he
Yeah.
has to be, but those power struggles. And I've literally thought about that. I'm like, he triggers me so much because I felt like I had zero control. I was always told what to do. People were always like, and so it's so funny, like to acknowledge that as a parent and be like, this actually doesn't have to do with the way he's behaving. It has to do with my reaction to it. And the kids have this saying nowadays, it's rage baiting,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they'll literally say, my daughter will be like, he's just rage baiting you. And I'm like, I know. He's working.
It's
And then I have to
working.
like pull myself back. I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
isn't an issue of the thing. And I have to tell him too, like, hey, you're 9, you're the child. Like, let's calm down a little bit because we don't actually have to like have control and fingers everywhere and like let me be the parent, but also like recognizing that it's a reflection of like what's happening inside of me.
Totally.
But
And the truth is, all of us want to feel in control. I mean, we
mm,
all want to feel in control of our experience, of our emotions, of what's happening in the world, in our own life, and how things are playing out. That, I mean, to me, that is like ultimately the goal for most people. And it's absolutely a driving factor in behavior a lot of the time. I have a 12-year-old stepdaughter who goes back and forth. And often, like, I'll say to my husband, like, this is her wanting to feel in control. She doesn't have a
mm,
lot of control in her life. Like, her schedule is dictated to her, where she's living, like what she's doing. Like, so there are a lot of times where I'm like, bite your tongue right now. Bite your tongue. This
yeah.
is not personal to you at all. It's personal to her. And
Mm,
my goal, especially as her stepmom, is to help her feel healthy power. I talk a lot about like healthy power and unhealthy power. Healthy power is when you feel in control of yourself. Unhealthy power is when you try to control other people so that you feel in control. And
mm,
then we get codependency, like all these, there's like so many
yeah.
moving parts, but um don't we all just want to feel in control? Don't we all want
Yeah.
to feel like we have a say in how things are unfolding for us,
Yeah.
And when we don't, man, like when I think about the emotional scale, the vibration of emotions, feeling powerless is one of the worst ones. Feeling
Mm,
like somebody else has control over you.
yeah.
Awful, awful,
Yeah.
awful.
Mm,
And it'll drive all kinds of unpleasant behavior because they're
mm,
clawing at feeling like they have control in their own life.
yeah. And kids just want to feel safe and seen
Yeah.
and loved, right? And that's what it is. How do we, something that you had kind of touched on that brought up an example in my mind, around boundaries. We'll say, like, I always tell my kids, I'm like, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to do anything. And literally, it was last week. I asked my son to do something and he said no. And I said,
Mm.
no. He goes, no is a complete sentence, mom. I said, I was like,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. But he wanted something from me, right? So I was like, that was a complete sentence, like, but it's like, how do you bridge that as a parent, right? Where it's like, I want you to have your authority and to say no and to like be in that. Because for me, no was not something I said as a child. That was not okay to have boundaries. That was seen as cold. So as an adult, that got me into a lot of the relationships I ended up in because I didn't know how to say no. I people
Right.
pleased and all my boundaries. I didn't even know what boundaries to set, let alone, to be crossed. And so it was, frustrating to hear my son say that. But also I was like, but this is what I want him to be able to feel empowered to say. So how do we, I guess, like
Yeah.
meet that and like balance that as a parent?
Yeah. Okay. No is a complicated word because think back to when they're little, you know, like a little toddler, we'll often say to them, like, and we'll say, no, 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 don't touch that.
Mm.
We'll say it like 5 or 6 times to really emphasize the point. Um, and then they start saying no to us, and we don't like that. But to the little ones, no is like their first curse word. It's got
Mm.
power. No to a 2 or 3-year-old is like the F word.
Yeah.
Powerful. It's strong, you know? And so then as they get older, and especially if they're growing up with somebody who's modeling for them, like no is a complete sentence. Like you get to say no if it doesn't feel good for you.
Mm.
Now that's really powerful. So what's tricky is like when you're on the receiving end of that no and you don't like it, like, you know, if you're like, hey man, can you take the garbage out? No. Like, okay, let me rephrase my request. The garbage needs to be taken out sometime today. Would you prefer to take it out now or later?
Mm.
Because sometimes we ask things in a way that is a setup for them to be, you know, like grab unhealthy power.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, at 9, some of the things that we struggled with was like, are you getting in the shower? Did you brush your teeth? Have you made your bed? Right? All of those sort of like day-to-day things that they don't want to do. They don't want to do it. Even now
Yeah.
at 12, she's like, why do I need to make my bed? I'm like, why do you need to make your bed? Because it feels good to walk into a tidy room, because
Yeah.
that's what we do in our family, because, you
Mm-hmm.
know, we want to have a beautiful home that feels nice. Like, so the question is not like, will you make your bed? It's, do you need help making your bed?
Mm.
Are you going to do it on your own, or do you want me to come help you do it? You know, and in that way, it's become a task that isn't like she has to do it, and so she's going to push back against me when she has the opportunity. It's more like,
Yeah.
this is what we do in our house. So like, if you're not going to make the bed, I'll come make it for you. I think a lot of times we want to be really gentle when I say this. We unintentionally and unconsciously create a power struggle with them
Mm.
by the way that we ask them to do something. And we want to also honor that at 9, their world, what's important, their view is different than ours. You know, they don't understand our stresses yet, and God bless them for it. You know,
Yeah.
um, and so when we make a request, one of the things I really help parents with when we're talking power struggles is like, how are we making that request? How are we asking them to do something so that it doesn't become a, well, you need to do it right now. Turn that off and go do it right now. I told you to do it. You need to do it.
Mm.
Because then, even if they do it, they're under their breath, like, hate her. I can't wait till I get to move out of this house. She's so mean. She doesn't understand it. And we are breeding these emotions in them that will either explode or they're just going to fester. And they're not, but we're not teaching them how to have healthy power. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a tricky
Yeah, and
answer,
it's funny
you
because
know?
it was literally over taking the trash out, like you said.
Of
That's what it
course.
was,
Yeah.
and he's like, because he does it every Tuesday. It's part of his chore. You know,
Yeah.
he's on the video games now, and he wants the
Yes.
Robux. I'm like, if you have to earn, I'm not just gonna hand you money like for
Sure.
nothing, right? So he knows that that's part of his chores,
Yeah.
and so when he said no, that's what I was like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
but it to work rephrase it, you know, and you kind of going back to human design. So this is like, to me, human design and energetics has really helped me in parenting, just like understanding them. And, you know, so you're also a sacral being or a generator. So your sacral response of like that yes and no in the moment. And so with him, I've learned to just like kind of the way that you were phrased it, where it's not a yes or no answer, right? Or let me think, because he gets his yes and no in the moment, but it's not so much giving, I don't know. I'm like completely backtracking on what I was going to say now in my mind as I'm like
Yeah. That's
wording
okay.
it, but it's like, yeah, reframing it not to be like him giving me a yes or no answer, right? Where it's like kind of like, are you going to do it now or later, right? And then he can feel into it, or like,
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
stuff like that. But that sacral response in human design typically gives you a yes or no in the moment, right?
Right.
Like you'll know kind of, and like I know with him too, when it's something that he doesn't want to do, there'll be a pause, right? And I think that when there is that pause, then you can, you know, for me, it's like reframing it to a way that, you know,
Yeah.
gives him a little bit more power, like it's going to get done because it is
Yes.
this thing that we have to do, you know. But and then just kind of like reframing it that way. But you know, like there's times where, I mean, you just go to is be like, take out the trash now, and he's like, no. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay. That it wasn't a it wasn't a question. But
Totally.
yeah.
And that's where I would also say, like putting some, so one of the things that I find that's challenging for a lot of parents I work with is when we're parenting in the moment, like on the fly.
Mm.
I like to help parents look at the ongoing challenges. Like if every Tuesday he has to take out the trash, let's just step out of it for a moment and look at how can we set it up so that he can be successful taking the trash out every Tuesday. And I would say something to him like, I was thinking about what happened last week and you didn't want to take the trash out. And I think I probably got a little bit upset with you and I don't want to get upset with you. So here's what I'm thinking. The trash really needs to be out by 8 p.m. because then I'm making this up, obviously, by
Mhm.
8 p.m. because then you have to shower and get into bed. So anytime before 8 p.m. that you want to take it out is cool. If you want me to remind you, you let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it up to you. And if I have to take the trash out because it's now 8:01, no Robux that week.
Mm.
So totally your call. You make the decision. You're on it. You want a reminder, you let me know. Don't want a reminder, you let me know. You want to take it out, you don't take it out. Totally your decision. If you want the Robux, take out the trash by 8 p.m. That way, because then you're setting up a really clear boundary where basically you're saying to him, here's where my no is. You're giving him a little more explanation about it. Because when he's
Mhm.
like, can I get those Robux? You're like, no. But you're helping him understand where his power is to get a yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I really love to help parents set up these kind of like boundaries where they just step out of the day to day for a little bit and put them in place with their kids, because then your kids feel empowered to make their own decisions. Like if he's really in the middle of something, look, uh, we take our trash out, my husband or I. Sometimes there's a week where I'm like, I am so tired and my husband didn't take it out and he's already asleep and I didn't take it out and I know that they come at 5 in the morning. My decision is we're not going to have the trash emptied this week.
Yeah.
And we're just going to deal with the consequence. But
Yeah.
I'm in a power position to make that choice.
Mm.
And now I'm the one who's going to feel the consequence of it? So I find that with sensitive kids, especially the strong-willed ones, the freedom seekers, the power seekers, the rebellious ones, the ones who march to their own drum, if they have these clear guidelines and then they get to make the decisions, and then you're like, oh, hey, you made that choice, so here's what we've agreed upon. They're going to make a different choice down the road if that choice didn't feel good for them, or maybe not. But it's not now like mom telling me what to do. Mom's so mean. It's more like, oh man, I didn't take out the trash. I don't get any Robux. Or, oh man, I didn't take out the trash. Now I can't like clean out the pantry or whatever I was going to do this week. It's like then you live with your own consequence. And that actually feels really empowering. It's like you are in control of how things work out for you. That is healthy power.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, my son is definitely that like strong-willed kid. And both my kids are like incredibly sensitive. My daughter's 15, she's a little bit older now, so she's in a very different kind of like
Yeah.
phase of her life. But yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating just to like watch watch them and again like doing this own work on ourselves. And I like what you said earlier, it's like most of the work, ends up being the parents' work.
Yeah.
It's like I think witnessing your child and I don't know, I just keep coming back to like the kids just want to be loved.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, everything I think is them twisting and contorting to like be seen and to be loved, and
Totally.
it's like what you do I think is so important and so needed, as I mean always, but I think especially right now in the climate and the times that we're in, to be able to like, because like even you're talking about earlier like influencers and things like that, like what children are moving towards now is so different than what we're used
Yeah.
to. My
Totally.
son even the other day he was like, I want to make a YouTube account, and I was like, why? And he was like, because I want to make videos, and once I hit 1,000 subscribers then I can start making money doing this, and he's just got this whole big plan. And I'm like, okay, well why don't we first download CapCut and then
Yeah.
make some videos and show me, because it's like I don't want to shut him down, because I mean that's what we're moving towards,
Yeah.
right? Like it's crazy the differences and things, but
I
like
I
it's really
agree.
cool to watch at the same time, I mean.
It's cool and it's evolving so rapidly. And I
Mhm.
think they are the ones evolving it, as
Yeah.
they're energetically. I think their generation is
Mhm.
really pushing it and um wild times. These are wild times to be a
Yeah.
parent. to be a kid, and it's not easy, you know,
Yeah.
um so like I know sometimes I'm like a little bit hard on people, or I'm a little harsh in the way that I'm saying things, but I want to really be gentle and say like it is not easy right now.
Mhm.
And we are all doing the best that we can, and the best that we can is what we and our children agreed to. Yeah.
Mhm.
So like softening any guilt or shame or self-judgment in the way that we're doing it, and just making a decision that we're going to show up the best that we can. We're going to do the best that we can. We are seeing this journey as a spiritual process for us and for them, and trusting that it's unfolding in the way that it's supposed to. Like from that perspective, you really can't go wrong, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because if you're open to seeing it in that way, it's going to keep evolving and opening up, and you just be gentle with yourself and your kids as it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're working with parents, do you weave in like spirituality, or you just kind of, okay. Yeah.
I do.
And what does that look like?
Well, a lot of it is talking about their own journey. I mean, it's funny because mostly I like to work one-on-one. I do also do small groups with parents, but the way that I work live is generally in like a more intimate setting.
Mhm.
And so usually by the end of our first session together, parents can feel that they can trust me and that I'm safe. And that I'm sharing about myself too. You know, it's not
Mhm.
like I'm closed and I'm just, hearing them. Um, and usually by the time we get into our second session, they feel more relaxed to be more vulnerable about what's really
Mhm.
going on. And that's when I can really get into talking about the spiritual journey. Although, I think it's funny, my work has evolved over the years. I used to really market myself as like, we're going to change your kids' behavior because that's what parents want to hear. And I would like backdoor spirituality into them. Like I would hope that my clients were open to that. And I don't know, in the last like 5 or 7 years, I was like, why am I hiding that that's what I do? Like,
Mhm.
that is what I do. Those, and I realized those are the parents that I love working with. The parents who come to me who are like wanting to change their kids' behavior, and they're both CEOs or corporate lawyers, and they're not really wanting to look at themselves. I didn't love working with them in the same way. And so I really started shifting how I was talking about things. I'm like, why am I hiding this? Like, this is the work. The work is parenting is a spiritual being, and looking at ourselves in relationship to being a parent, like, yeah, we're parents, but we're also who we are. We're also still, Melissa, and a sister and a daughter and a wife and a friend and a neighbor and a lady who sometimes like yells at other people in traffic. Like we bring all of who we are to our parenting.
Mhm.
And so if we're trying to compartmentalize it, that's not really a spiritual experience. So um I've actually like when usually I'll talk with a family before they start working with me. We'll do a quick call so that we can feel things out, and I can make sure that I can work with them. There are families who come to me and I'm like, oh, what's going on here is not for me. I don't think I can help you guys. But I will let them know kind of right off the bat. This is spiritual work. This is not just about changing your kid. It's not that there's something wrong with your kid and we're going to fix them. This is about you as a family and how you're all relating to each other and your spiritual evolution together. So usually by the second session, everybody's guard is kind of down. Like my hair's up in a messy bun, and we're able to really get into the nitty gritty of it. And that's when the fun really starts, because that's when the change happens.
Mhm. Is your work like more enjoyable now that you are very more upfront with the
Yeah,
spirituality? Yeah.
totally. Totally. And the clients that come to me and the referrals that I get
Mhm.
are families that I'm like I get off of a call with a new family and I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be so much fun, or especially when they're like, oh, we're struggling so much and we don't know what to do with our kid and we've tried all these things. I'm like, yes, like give me 3 months. Give me 3 months. It usually doesn't even take that long. Like that's kind of like the longer end of working with a family.
Yeah.
But like 8, 10, 12 sessions, things are so drastically different. And sometimes I joke like I'm almost too good at what I do because I'm always needing to like pull in new clients. Some people work with people for a really long time, but For me, when a family comes to me and I can feel where it's going, like where we are, where they want to be, and I can just see the path, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. Yeah. So yes, as I've shifted how transparent I am about what the work really looks like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those are the families that come, because the ones who aren't into it are like, I'm assuming are turned off. I don't know. I don't hear from them anymore. Nobody's
Yeah.
emailing me and being like, oh, your work isn't for me. Right.
Yeah.
But the ones who show up are
Mhm.
wonderful. Like I fall in love with every family that I work with. And um it's such a blessing to do the work that I do. Like it really, it's like very, and for me it's so healing too, like when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm this little girl. I keep this photo on my desk. This is me and my brother when we were little with our dog Pepper.
No.
And like
Mhm.
she's in the driver's
Yeah.
seat, because like she's the reason that I'm doing this, right? So
Mhm.
like I want to be reminded, like this is for her. Every family I work with is her, like having this, like, I mean, she was always like sassy, confident, but like authentic, really coming from this empowered place, not trying to manipulate the power, right? Not
Yeah.
getting into it in that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so
I
much fun.
love that.
So,
I
so
love
fun.
that. Yeah, this conversation has been so interesting and fast. I mean, like I said, it's so important, for families right now. So how can they, if anybody's listening who's a parent or like really like wanting to like dive more into this work,
Yeah.
like how can they find you? How can they work with you? I'll have everything linked in the show notes as well, but if you want to let them
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So my website is melissaschwartz.com. I think I'm at Melissa Schwartz on most platforms. Um, TikTok and YouTube, I think, is Melissa Schwartz 1111. Somebody else got to it before me. But if you go to my website, that's the best way. There's a blog. I write lots of articles. There's all sorts of links, tons of free resources. You can schedule a call with me if you want to chat and just pick my ear about something. I'm always happy to connect with people who are interested in this kind of conversation. Like what's more fun than this?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And you can feel how much you love this work and what you do. And that's
I
beautiful.
do.
So yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate you having me on.
Of course.